scripture reading, and the scripture reading comes from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 16, verses 14 to 15, and then 18 to 20. And the Word of God says, "When they came to the crowd, a man approached Jesus and knelt before him. 'Lord, have mercy on my son,' he said. 'He has seizures and is suffering greatly. He often falls into the fire or into the water.' Jesus rebuked the demon, and it came out of the boy, and he was healed at that moment. Then the disciples came to Jesus in private and asked, 'Why couldn't we drive it out?' He replied, 'Because you have so little faith. Truly I tell you, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, "Move from here to there," and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you.'" May God bless the reading of His Word.
Thanks, Ellie. Right. Let's start out. We'll talk a little sports and activities. What are some sports where you have to hit a target? All right, get that. Some sports where you're playing, one of the points of the sport is to hit a target. Well, what are some? Archery, thank you. What else? Golf, of course, yes, one of the most popular in the United States. There's basketball. You got to hit a target. That's one of the main points of the sport. Anything else? Anything? What's that? Soccer. That's right. You got a goal. You got to hit. Fishing, right? Fishing. You got to get your lure where you want it to go. You got to hit a target. What else? Hockey, yes, that's right. A lot coming in. Yeah, think of all this stuff. I mean, there's marksmanship, there's hunting. Hunting, you got to hit a mark. And then there's curling. If anybody wants curling, you're trying to hit a mark. You got a shuffleboard. It's the non-ice version of curling. There's croquet. There's croquet. There's bowling. All sports where you need to hit a certain target. And the people who work on these sports, they have a say. People who want to hit a target, and they're aiming at a target, they want to get good at it, they say this, they say, aim small, miss small. Aim small, miss small. So if you want to hit a big target, don't aim at the big target. You aim at the bullseye. You aim at the bullseye, and you miss small, you're going to hit your target, you're going to achieve your goal. If your goal is to hit the bullseye, don't aim at the bullseye. Aim at the little point inside the bullseye, right in the middle. And then if you miss small, which you're trying to train yourself to do, you'll still hit your goal. You'll hit the bullseye in the target. So aim small, miss small. And there is a great warning here about life. It is possible for us to aim at such big targets that we never end up taking a shot. For instance, let's say one of my goals or one of my hopes is to start running. I want to become a runner. I want to go out and I want to run. I want to make this something that's going to make me healthier and, an interest I can have. And of course, if I'm going to run, then a goal I want to set for myself, and being me, and I want to set big goals for myself, is to run a marathon. So I want to run, and I set the goal to run a marathon. But come to think of it, I don't have time to train for a marathon, so I'm just not going to run at all. Right? We can talk ourselves out of something by having a goal that's too big. We may have the goal of I want a close circle of friends. Small circle of close friends. That's what I want in my life. And that's a big target. It's a big, important thing to have. But what you need to do to get to that target is you need to hit the smaller things of having lots and lots of acquaintances. You better go out there and meet 100 people if you want to find a small group of people that are your close friends. Oh, no, I don't want to do that. I want to have a small, close group of friends, but I don't want to go out and meet scores and scores of people. See, we don't want to hit the small targets. We never get to the big target. And that can be such a problem for us. This idea that, we really want only to reach for the big thing. It can cause us to miss a lot. In fact, there was a psychologist who had a study. He was kind of interested in what's the difference between people who consider themselves lucky and people who consider themselves unlucky. Now, some of us may be right in the middle, but many of us are on one side of that or the other. Either we consider ourselves lucky or we consider ourselves unlucky. So what's the difference between the two? So we got this experiment going that's kind of cool. He got a group of people together, half of which thought of themselves as unlucky and half of which thought of themselves as lucky. And he had each of these people sit down, and he gave them a newspaper, and he said to them, I want you to tell me how many photographs are in this newspaper, and I'm going to be timing you to see how fast you can do it. And they did it, and the unlucky people, on average, took about 2 minutes to look through the paper and to count all the photos and to tell them how many photos were in the paper. The lucky people did it in a few seconds. How is this possible? How did the unlucky people took so long and the lucky people were so quick? Well, the lucky people saw a little note that was taped on the second page that said, stop counting, there are 47 pictures in this newspaper. See, the unlucky people were so focused on this big task of getting this job done that they missed it. And the lucky people noticed it. He said, this is the difference between unlucky people and lucky people. Unlucky people are so focused on something, they miss all the good things that are around them. He said an unlucky person will go to a party so focused on finding a partner, a mate, a spouse, that person will miss the chance to make a lot of good friends at that party. A lucky person will look through the paper for a job. An unlucky person, when he looks through the want ads, will be so focused on the perfect job that the unlucky person is going to miss all the other opportunities that are there for a fulfilling, uplifting job, but he doesn't see them because he's so focused on this big picture. Let me suggest to you today, after all this stuff about luck and other things, getting to our faith can be the same way. We can get so caught up in the big promises of faith, in the big responsibilities of faith, that we don't see the little opportunities that exist to feel close to God and to do good for others. And when we do those things, sometimes we don't even think of them as things we are doing because of our faith. We miss out on the little because we're so focused on the big things, and that those things can actually intimidate us. You know, Jesus said, if you have a tiny amount of faith like a mustard seed. The average mustard seed is 1 millimeter long. Tiny. You can barely see it. It's in the palm of your hand. If you have that much faith, then God will give you the power to move a mountain. Through God, you can move a mountain with that much faith. It's easy for us ministers to kind of hold up big examples in our sermons. So we talk about Mother Teresa. We talk about apostles and prophets and saints. And then we say, go and do likewise, right? Go and be like these people. And we leave the service going, oh, brother, I'm supposed to be, like a saint. I can't do that. We sure don't want to get to the place where we're thinking, I don't have the faith to be a saint, so I'm not going to worry about faith at all. Or I don't have what it takes to do as much as Mother Teresa did in Christian service, so I'm not going to worry about Christian service at all. Now, we have to be willing to look at those little opportunities that we are given. It's like tiny things. We do tiny, small things. We muster a little bit of faith that we do have at any given moment to do something and bless someone else. Mountains can get moved when we have that kind of willingness to even use the little bit of faith that we have. This is true of all parts of our life. The willingness to be open to all these little opportunities that exist, to use all the little bit of faith we have. But it's true in evangelism. Inviting people. There's one guy who said he wanted to keep his evangelism really simple. He was actually a famous minister. He kept his evangelism very simple. He said evangelism, all that's about is inviting people when you're part of the church. It's inviting people and welcoming people. And that's all there is to it, inviting and welcoming. And so he focused on that in his life, get people to come to church. And so he would invite everybody he met. Every person he came along to, and every person he met, he'd say, well, do you have a church home? If they said no, he would invite them to his church. And he did that with everyone. Now, there was one person in his church that took issue with this. Didn't think this was really biblical evangelism. And was kind of worried about it. And so, as does happen, even in church, we give our very best gift, we try our very best, and someone will be there to criticize it. Right? So there's this person ready to criticize, saying, you know, no offense. So you know you're in trouble, right? When anyone starts out, no offense, but I don't like your method of evangelism, the critic said to this man. And the man said, well, you know what? It's the best I've come up with. I don't really like it that much myself. What is your method of evangelism? And the critic said, oh, I don't have a method of evangelism. And the man said, well, I'm sorry then, I like my method of evangelism better than your method of evangelism. Well, you see, I'm not saying we need to go out there and invite everybody we meet to church. Though we certainly could do that. That's something that would be possible for us to do. But it may be beyond some of us. We may think, I don't have the gifts for that. I don't have the talents for that. Or maybe, if we're very honest with ourselves, I don't have the faith for that. Okay. Then aim smaller. So instead of inviting everybody you meet, how about inviting one person each month to church? Come up to them and say, hey, look, we got the room. You come, look, we got plenty of space here. Come on to church. Come on to church with me. Do that once a month. Once a month. And then some of us may say, oh, no, it's still too much. I mean, it's a lot less than everybody I meet, but it's still, I don't think I can do that. Well, okay, let's aim smaller. How about one person a year? To wait during the year to that moment where you meet somebody, and I know you do, where the subject of church comes up, and they mention that they're looking, or they mention they don't have a church, or they mention they're new in town, and they give you that perfect opening, which always comes, I'm sure comes to you at least once a year, and you take them up on that opening, and you invite them to church, and you make that a part of your evangelism ministry. Once a year, I will invite someone to church. No. I don't think so. I don't think I'd even do that. I'd probably do it maybe once and then I'd forget next year. That's the way it would be. Okay. Well, then let's aim even smaller. To say, I am one time during my life going to invite someone to my church. One time during my life, I'm going to extend that invitation. That's pretty small. I mean, we kind of think that's not much at all. One invitation, it can make all the difference. One invitation can make all the difference to the person you're inviting. Who knows, it may make a big difference to you. You may be changed by making that one invitation that you intended to make during your life. Well, you may end up making more because that went so well. You may have a big impact on your church. That one person you invite may not become your best friend and the person that prays with you when difficult things happen, but that person may become a friend of someone here in the church and be their number one support. And that person will be the person you invite. It's number one support. You may be thinking that you are picking up a mustard seed when you invite one person to church and make that commitment to do that one time for the rest of your life. Yeah, this is a mustard seed. I'm just picking up a mustard seed. You may actually be moving a mountain. You never know. It's easy to think, man, that's a ridiculous commitment to make. That's a ridiculous goal to have. To do something that I know I'm supposed to be doing. To do it just one time. I would feel bad about doing that. Because, actually 0 is right next to 1. Right? You go into the elementary school classroom and you look up on the board, over the board, and there's all the numbers. It's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. 0's next to 1. But 1 is like doing nothing. It can seem that way. The mustard seed, 1 millimeter long, you put it in this hand. Here's the mustard seed. And you put nothing in this hand. I can't feel the weight of the mustard seed. I can't tell that it's there. I cannot feel it. I got shake. I can't even feel that it's in my hand. It's not making my nerves respond in any way. And with my 49-year-old eyes, well, my arms aren't long enough. I can't see the mustard seed either. It's so tiny in my hand. Carrying nothing and carrying a mustard seed, there's no difference then. Except for one thing. A mustard seed can grow into a mighty tree, and nothing can grow into nothing. That's the difference. Never discount the power of doing one small thing. One act of compassion, one word of kindness or love, one invitation, one word of welcome. You may think it's just a mustard seed, but mountains may be being moved through that one action. And you may never know who it's affecting and how it's affecting them. You may never know how it affects you, how it affects those you love, how it affects your church, how it affects those you know, and how it affects those who you will never meet. I heard a great story, World War II story. I always love World War II stories. This is about a guy who's a journalist. His name's Elmer Bendiner. I'm not sure if I'm getting that last name right, so let's just call him Elmer. And he was a journalist and a writer back in the 20th century, and he spent his World War II years as a navigator on a B-17 Flying Fortress. And he wrote about this. He wrote a great book about his life as a journalist and also his time in the war. And he told one story in particular that caught my attention. It occurred after a mission that they had flown, and they had gone through some bad flak. Now, I didn't really realize this before I read up on it a little bit. I knew flak was bad. Flak was actually 20-millimeter shells, so like bullets, except that the bad part, that the bullet that actually hit the plane would explode. So they would hit the plane, it would explode, but these B-17 Flying Fortresses could be hit a lot without ever having any trouble. They could be hit many times, except in one place, and of course that's the fuel tanks. They got hit in the fuel tanks, the round would explode, the tanks would explode, the plane would explode, and nobody would survive. Well, one time, on one mission, they came back and they discovered that their plane had been hit right in the fuel tank, but it hadn't exploded. They could see the holes there. It had been hit more than once, and so when the mechanics went in to investigate and to repair, they looked in the tank, and they found not 1 or 2 or 3 unexploded shells, but 11. 11 shells that had hit the tank and had not exploded. And, well, wow, how can we explain this miracle? This is amazing. We should be dead. Why didn't we die? Why didn't this plane explode? And so they took the shells and they took it to the armorer, who carefully took it apart, thinking there's still explosives inside. And he opened up the compartment where the explosives could be, and the compartment was empty. There were no explosives in the shell. That explained it. Somebody in the factory had messed up. Somebody hadn't done their job. They were supposed to put explosives in these shells, but thank the Lord, they didn't. And they probably would have left it at that if they hadn't found a note where the explosives should be in one of the shells. And they looked at it, and somebody said, I know that language, that's Czech. That's what Czechoslovakian people, language Czechoslovakian people use. They're like, well, let's find somebody to translate it, because they knew that the Czechs were an occupied people. The country had been occupied. They knew that the factories there had been ordered to make ammunition that could be used against the Allies. So that there were workers that were being forced to make these 20-millimeter shells. And so they wanted to know what this worker had to say to them. And they found somebody who spoke Czech, and they looked at the note, and they translated it. And the note said, this is all we can do to help you right now. One small act of sabotage. One little act of omission. It wasn't doing something, it was not doing something. And through that one small act, they saved at least one plane and the entire crew. And they also gave these men who were fighting the assurance that there were Czechs and Poles and Danes and French, and yes, Germans too, who were making little acts, who were doing what they could to help. Never be so focused on the great responsibilities of faith, on the great promises of faith, that you forget what you can do with just a mustard seed. Or if you are able to muster what faith you can, if you're able to do what you can do, then you'll be able to sit back and watch as another mountain gets moved. Let's bow. Loving God, you have given us many mighty gifts that